As a host and organizer of this panel, it gives me great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you today. Thank you for taking the time and interest in the subjects we are going to discuss. I want to extend also a special thanks to our partners, the Institute of Central Europe in Poland. We have Mr. Piotr Oleksy representing them today here and taking the role of moderator. Throughout the panel, we will have the heads of the Eastern and the Balkan departments of the Institute of Central Europe joining us, as well as senior analysts and researchers. The panel, I think, has a very good array of expertise from diplomatic input, academic, and a journalist lens. So I think that we will have a very broad spectrum of discussions today. As you probably know, the format includes two thematic sections for coherence and cohesiveness of discussions. We will have a first section concentrating on the Eastern Partnership countries, followed by a short break, and then we will go on with discussions on Western Balkans. And without further ado, I want to welcome today and to extend a very special thank you to a very close friend and collaborator of the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center, a very staunch supporter of democratic resilience and values, and someone who has been a partner for us for the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center from the very beginning. His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of Moldova, Mr. Victor Kirilă, who will be gracing us with the keynote speech. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I'm very honored to be here today, and thank you very much for inviting me here, and thank you for the privilege to speak first at this panel. This year, in August this year, Republic of Moldova celebrated 32 years of independence. Is it a lot? Is it a little? Probably for some countries like Russia, who would like to restore its former empire, it's a lot. For Republic of Moldova, I would say that it is a miracle that Republic of Moldova survived as a state. It's a miracle because we have to withstand many challenges, domestic challenges, external challenges, international challenges. From the beginning, we had to cope with a full-scale war against us. A war launched by Russian Federation together with separatists from Transnistrian region. And we stood this pressure. Then we had to cope with energy blackmail, economic blackmail, boycott of our key products, agricultural products. We had to deal with domestic subversion of key institutions of our democracy. We had to deal as well with a divided society between East and West, we had to deal, and we are dealing still, with hybrid threats from the beginning. Hybrid threats didn't start with Russian war against Georgia or with the Russian war against Ukraine. It started right after Moldova declared its independence. And despite all these challenges, Moldova survived. Moldova preserved its statehood. Moldova preserved its democratic structures. We continued, our society continued to be, to cherish its democratic choice. And of course, despite some shortcomings, we continue to have parliamentary elections, presidential elections, local elections. All these show that Republic of Moldova has a level of resilience. But after Russia launched its war against Ukraine, it showed that after using all tools to undermine the statehood not only of Moldova, but of Georgia, Ukraine, and other countries, it decided to use the latest one, the last one, war, occupation of our territories. And against this challenge, we are not strong enough to withstand Russia, to face the Russia. We need partners. And of course, we need to get out of gray zone. The fact that we remained in gray zone for so long time, it was an invitation for Russia to challenge us, to undermine us, and of course to try the last resort, war against us. Last year, the European Union offered to Moldova and Ukraine, and I hope that in the near future the same will be offered to Georgia, candidate status to the European Union. This is the first step towards getting Republic of Moldova and Ukraine and Georgia out of gray zone. I underline, this is the first step. The next logical step would be to launch negotiations with Moldova, Ukraine, and Georgia to join the European Union. Of course, this is not going to be an easy path. Of course, we understand we have to implement reforms to abide by regulations of the European Union. But we need to start this process. Resilience, it's not only about resisting to Russia. It's about creating necessary conditions to build your country, to build your economy, to strengthen your institutions, that would offer to people of Moldova, people of Ukraine and Georgia, prosperity and necessary guarantees that they will live in peace in their country, and they will continue to have to choose their domestic policies and also foreign policies that respond to the interest of their countries. Building resilience It's not going to be an easy task as long as Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova will not have necessary security guarantees that would discourage Russia to invade us in the future. And I think that the discussion that started this year on a future security arrangements for Ukraine should include as well Republic of Moldova and Georgia. Republic of Moldova cannot build resilience as long it will deal with separatist region on its eastern border between Dnistru and Ukraine border. The resilience will not be convincing for Moldovans and also for foreign investors as long we will have military troops, Russian military troops on our territory in Transnistrian region. That's why it's good to have candidate status for joining the European Union. It would be excellent to start negotiations with the European Union. But we need as well security guarantees in the future that would give us necessary assurances to Moldovan citizens, to our political class, to society in general, and to our foreign partners to support building a democratic and strong Moldovan, Ukrainian, and Georgian state. This is my introduction to our discussion. When it comes to immediate challenges of the Republic of Moldova, Russian war against Ukraine is a war against the Republic of Moldova. We feel the consequences. We had to deal with the refugee crisis. We had to deal with energy and still dealing with energy pressure. We are dealing with economic consequences. So far, we managed to cope with all of them because all these crises came all at the same time. We managed to do this because of the resilience of the society, because society showed that it has a level of resilience. In the first day, in the first hours of the war, we showed the solidarity, necessary solidarity with Ukrainian people. We received hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees, and we offered them necessary protection. We offered them food. We offered them health services in Moldova. We offered them green lines to pass and secure lines to pass our territory to European Union, to Romania and other European states. But we managed this because we had the support of our partners. And this is another key element for a true resilience of any state. For 32 years, we didn't have the privilege to have necessary support from outside in order to deal with all the pressure which came from Russia. The war allowed us to build behind us an alliance of solidarity with our Western partners. And we hope that this alliance of solidarity will transform itself in an alliance of, a long-term alliance of strengthening our security, building our economy, and ensuring the energy security of the Republic of Moldova. The next couple of years, 2 years, will be very critical for the Republic of Moldova. Next year, we will have elections, presidential elections. Even this year, we have local elections, but I wouldn't say that they are critical for our stability. But anyway, it's going to be a challenge as well. But next year, we'll have presidential elections. And in 2025, we will have parliamentary elections. We made a lot of progresses, despite the war, to continue reforms in the Republic of Moldova, to strengthen the institutions, and to bring Moldova closer to the European Union. All these achievements are not certain if pro-European parties will lose next parliamentary elections. That's why I think we have to think how to shore our economy. Because last year we had a contraction of 6.5%. This year, 2.2%. We have a budget gap of 100 million euro, only for this year. For the next year, we will have a gap of almost 400 million euros. This means less money for supporting vulnerable layers of our society, to deal with energy prices, with food prices. This means less money for modernizing our infrastructure. This means less money for buying necessary gas storages gas volumes, in order to overcome the next winter. That's why we have now 3 key priorities to put forward a long-term development strategy for our country and to engage our partners to support it. On October 17th this year, we will organize the next session of Moldova Support Platform. And this concept, this strategy, will be put for approval, will be explained to our partners. We need to focus urgently on creating a special fund for building our infrastructure, rail infrastructure, road infrastructure, port infrastructure, which will benefit not only economic development of Moldova, but it would ensure as well necessary condition for export and imports coming from and to Ukraine. This will mean secure solidarity lanes for Ukraine in the future. Also, we need to build, together with our Western partners, an energy fund that would ensure the energy stability and independence of the Republic of Moldova, which is a key element for our resilience. One of the objectives of our energy security is to build interconnections between Moldova and Romania and the European Union energy networks. And here I mean gas pipelines, energy, electricity networks of European Union. We already started to build high voltage electric line that will unite Republic of Moldova, Romania with Republic of Moldova from Exarchia, Vulcanești, and Chișinău. But we need another one from Galați, from Belts to Suceava. All these two lines will ensure in the future necessary security, energy security for Republic of Moldova. Last year, under the pressure of Russia, of Gazprom, Russian gas company, we managed to find new resources for supplying our country with gas, alternative resources. The right bank of Nistru, I mean the territory controlled by constitutional authorities of Republic of Moldova, isn't consuming anymore Russian gas since last November. And we will continue this year as well. But we don't exclude that Russia, Gazprom, might stop the gas flow to Transnistria, which continues to use Russian gas. And this might create this winter an energy crisis, a political crisis, and a social crisis in Transnistria, where we have almost more than 300,000 citizens of Moldova, all of them with Moldovan passports or IDs. Of course, this will create a wave of let's say, refugees, our refugees, internal displaced people from Transnistria to Republic of Moldova, and this will create an additional pressure on our budget, on our resources. And we have to take this into account. Also, we need to shore up our budget, and we will appeal to Western countries to help us with, to continue to support us with macro-financial support for the next couple of years, and to allow Moldova to have access to concessional grants in the future. If we will be able to shore our economy, to give an impetus to our economic development, to improve our infrastructure, to improve our security, energy security, and also another condition, to cope with hybrid threats coming from Russia. Then we will be able to, we'll be in position to say that we have a necessary level of resilience that would favor a stable economic development of Moldova, a resilience that would create necessary basis for joining the European Union during the next 10 years. Our objective is to join the European Union until 2030. Of course, for some of you, it might sound like fantasy, but you know, we are living in a very critical, in a world which is moving in a regional security that is changing very fast. And I think that our European partners also have to take this into account and to judge not only our chances to join the European Union through the lenses of are we ready for implementing all the conditionalities, but also through the lens of judging the strategic geopolitical consequences of allowing Moldova and Georgia and Ukraine to continue to remain in the gray zone of our region, of Europe. I will stop here, and I remain open to your questions, to your comments, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you for your attention, and I invite my colleagues to continue with this panel.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for the very comprehensive and your generosity in offering the Moldovan perspective on resilience, democracy, and the way ahead in these very turbulent times. And with this, I declare the official discussions of the panel open and give the floor to my colleague Piotr Oleksiy to start, to kick off the entire dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. I want to thank Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center, because it's a great honor for Institute of Central Europe in Lublin, and for me personally, to have that possibility to collaborate in organizing that amazing event. And now I would just like to ask Mr. Filip Schwers, who is leading a team of EU experts in European Union partnership mission in Moldova, to bring us, to tell us about threats for Moldovan resilience and the EU efforts and instruments to counter them.
Thank you very much, Piotr, and big shoes to fill now after Ambassador's insight into Moldova, but I will do my best to connect the described threat landscape to possible ways to respond. First of all, I would like to underline that we have heard the call from Moldova. So as you can see here around the table, not only Romania is standing by your side, but I would say once in the first time in its existence, the common security and defense policy of the European Union moves for the first time into a proactive mode. I think for many of us, for many member states, but at the same time for the Union security architecture as such, the February 24 events last year have been changing our perspective, our analytical reading of situation, and also our appetite for exposure significantly. And me as a German national myself, I think we can fairly state that we have been misconstruing or misreading certain geopolitical developments which a country such as Moldova has been, and Ukraine even more direly, has been experiencing so devastatingly. We have been misreading this over the course of quite a long period. We have been promising back in the days support to Georgia, which did not materialize. We have been talking about strategic culture and forward-leaning defense posture, which did not materialize. I think, understandably, this learning curve in a multilateral institutions of 27 different nations can go slow, but I think what is crucial now here is that over the course of the last 18 months, a big ship such as the European Union has been showing a huge amount of adaptability and responsiveness. And I think the case of Moldova, now for the first time, gives us the chance to adapt our instruments, to show integration, and to finally innovate. What I would like to outline here in the next few minutes ahead is first, I think it's although it has been a painful learning curve for us, I think we can admit that we had not the right instruments following 2014, and that we still believed in a culture of appeasement and economic entanglement, which obviously, in hindsight, was mistaken and led us to led us to slow, bureaucratic, and geopolitically unwise decision-making. We are now fixing this. And I think the European Partnership Mission in Moldova is one of the very first baby steps in this strategic apparatus to show that the EU as such is not only an economic powerhouse, but has the ability to also shape regional security and help allied structures and the eastern flank in a more integrated and eventually efficient manner. What we have been seeing over the course of the late 18 months is a full-fledged hybrid assault on Moldova. We see kinetic threats within its internationally recognized boundaries. We do see socioeconomic interference. We do see the energy crisis being used to hold the country hostage. We see political interference across the board, and we see an unhealthy alliance of organized crime with pro-Kremlin political structures trying to basically get Moldova out of its pro-European trajectory. Here we are now ready to help, and I think one of the first signs we have been showing is that we first supplied significant budgetary and energy support to Moldova in the crucial first month, as we have been also doing to our dear ally Ukraine, which unfortunately we have read the situation too late. We are trying to fix this, and in Moldova we have been hearing the cry for help relating to the hybrid assault landscape we have been seeing. And it's not only about disinformation, as I already outlined in the opening. Disinformation is just a single small piece in the hybrid warfare toolkit which has been applied against Moldova. Just during the weekend, we just noticed an uptick of pro-Kremlin party, change party, election campaigning all across the country and across the internet. Huge costs, probably in the 7 digits. We cannot even understand where this money is coming from. So we are facing a perfect storm in Moldova right now. We see a country which has been under the precondition of neutrality, investing relatively little into its national security architecture. Also due to the influence, the hybrid influence of the bigger eastern neighbor. We see now that this fires back, and that Moldova needs in this crucial time, and as dear Ambassador has pointed out, the parliamentary and the presidential elections, which will take place in the 300 days to come, are absolutely crucial and absolutely vulnerable to foreign interference and to further obstruction of political will. It's not about that the popular mindset is against Europe. It is much more that we see potent opponents with full coffers of cash trying to influence minorities, try to influence rural population, and try to influence the media landscape at large with a much more capable toolkit than the European Union or any member state has ever been developing. So to basically now address this, we have a multitude of instruments within the big landscape of the European Union. The European Union has become, or has been becoming, quite a big supertanker, with many instruments being not necessarily aligned and decision-making being relatively slow. What we see, and that is my frank and firm personal perspective, is that that this slow bureaucratic procedures we have been developing to assure consensus and to align each individual interest has the necessity to speed up, and we have been showing our ability to adapt. What we are right now, and I can only solely now lens in to the national security notion of the assistance we are granting to Moldova through a lens of partnership. So in the previous decades, and this is my 16th deployment, so in the previous decade I can say that we have been mostly coming in as the European fairly disconnected ivory tower experts providing strategic advice and then disappearing without reassuring connectivity. We are now, in the case of Moldova, we are for the first time changing our approach altogether. We have been connecting existing financing streams from the foreign policy instruments, FPI, together with fundings from different directorate generals, the famous DGs. I'm pretty sure Romania has had a fair fight with those DGs throughout the last 1.5 decades. And we have been now trying to integrate all these instruments under one umbrella, under the optic to enable Moldova's national security architecture to respond. So we are not sending TIEX missions. We are not sending short-term experts providing quick policy advice. We are supplying a dozen and more full-fledged national security experts to basically assist Moldova across the 4 crucial angles when it comes to the tackling of hybrid warfare. Angle number 1 is strategic communications. Strategic communications is a buzzword and the flavor of the day. What we mean by this is, first of all, strengthening the resiliency, strengthening the detection and the analysis capability of foreign information manipulation and interference. Sounds pretty technical, but it's basically the troll factories we have been seeing at work all across the last few years, which has become an ecosystem by itself, attacking political will building, attacking the popular opinions across social media, and particularly in Moldova, where we do have quite a sizable part of the population which is still solely Russian-speaking. We have seen many channels trying to interfere into political opinions and decision-making. But detecting and analyzing foreign information interference is the reactive part. There has to be a proactive side to this, which is basically which includes proactive strategic communications on a campaign level, which needs to connect the current efforts of this very capable government in Chisinau, connected to the popular opinion and to represent it on the media scale. The second dimension is intelligence. The integration of intelligence into any form of crisis management response is, particularly in the context of hybrid warfare, absolutely crucial. For this you need, we intend, and we are already supplying Moldova with embedded support when it comes to analytical capabilities, intelligence cooperation, and subsequent reporting across horizontal actors. Third level is national security architecture. We have been drawing up frameworks and policies throughout the last 25 years without connecting them to realities. So warfare, conflict was far away. It was in Mali, it was in Niger, it was in Yemen, it was in Syria. It did not connect to Central and Western Europe. Hence, our many exercises were rather academic. Here now, we are connecting it straight to the realities in Moldova and building together with our Moldovan partners, trying to pool, centralize, and integrate existing national security actors and capabilities into an apparatus which can respond and better respond to the full-fledged assault the country has been facing. And last but not least, we aim at strengthening the crisis management structures across the country. Once you have detected and once you have analyzed the threat, you have to respond to this. Moldova has been showing an incredible learning curve over the last 24 months and particularly the last 18 months. You have been adapting to the threat landscape in a very rapid, ad hoc and capable manner. But as a small country facing a very big opponent, you are short on resources, and here we come in as a good ally and provide you with the necessary support to survive the storm. That is the overall optic of the European Partnership Mission, and for the first time, as I outlined this morning, we are now openly encouraging member states of the EU as well as like-minded partners to contribute not only with visiting experts, but also with funds and with specialized teams to amplify our effort in Moldova Although we are mainly, and here I'm representing only the national security lens of things, we are obviously working intensively on connecting this with our economic efforts, with our budgetary support, with our legislative expertise to help Moldova to the biggest extent possible and to show that the European Union is not only an economic collaboration, but eventually becomes a political and security alliance as it was initially designed to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And of course, it's not only Moldova, which is in our focus. We are looking on whole associated trio in that section of this panel. So now I would like to switch to the Georgia perspective and ask Mr. EARF2023 to bring us that perspective. Mr. EARF2023 is a deputy director of the political department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia, and I would like to, sorry, but I would like to kindly remind all panelists of keeping 10 minutes time, because I did that before, so.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, distinguished participants, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to address the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Forum on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Georgia in these times of exceptional significance for the international security environment. It is even more important to address issues of resilience in Euro-Atlantic area and beyond. Resilience has always been a crucial element of the North Atlantic Alliance and became more and more crucial for the European Union. Concerning North Atlantic Alliance, the provisions codified in Article 3 of the Washington Treaty oblige NATO member states to ensure preparedness for an armed attack, making the concept of the resilience as significant as the collective defense principle under Article 5 of the same treaty. Therefore, in the past years, NATO, separately and in cooperation with the EU, had been gradually strengthening its resilience against the traditional and non-traditional security challenges. Adoption of the 7 baseline requirements of resilience at the Warsaw Summit in 2016 is a significant part of these efforts. However, Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war of aggression against Ukraine, being a military engagement similar to what has not been observed in Europe since the Second World War, has forced the Alliance to develop an even more robust approach to resilience by merging the civilian and military aspects into one line. History has taught us in modern international relations, the security encounters of the countries are tightly intertwined. In such circumstances, NATO and the EU cannot solely maintain their focus on the strength and resilience of its members. All the efforts, whether ongoing or anticipated, should also be extended to the partner nations. It is especially relevant to aspiring countries in the NATO, such as Georgia and Ukraine, and Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia regarding membership in the EU. No longer there is hesitation that NATO membership of our countries, Ukraine and Georgia, is an unsurpassed guarantee of peace and stability in the Euro-Atlantic area. However, in the interim period before the accession, it is necessary to assume our nations with a tangible and solution-oriented security guarantees. Supporting us in strengthening the resilience of our national system should be an indispensable part of this process. Within NATO, in line with the highest level of military interoperability, improving Ukraine's and Georgia's countries' communication system and cyber network, critical infrastructure, civil preparedness, and warfighting capabilities will ensure interoperability with the Alliance on resilience. But concerning European Union, the decision made by EU leaders to recognize the EU membership of Ukraine and Moldova and the European perspective of Georgia creates unprecedented momentum of European integration path. These achievements represent the result of different grave, unfortunate developments and joint efforts, among many others that have brought us to this point. We hope that the process will continue in months and years to come In the meantime, we have to bear in mind that the EU accession process takes a long time and requires a lot of patience and hard work. Therefore, it is essential that the process is supported by concrete deliverables from the EU side, both in terms of political decisions and practical benefits. EU has also its security dimension, visibility of which became more and more undeniable nowadays, especially since the Russian-Ukrainian war. Georgia endorses the importance of the EU strategic compass for security and defense, which highlights security, stability, and resilience of the Eastern European partners against current grave geopolitical context. We look forward to work with the EU on concrete dimensions within the strategic compass, including promoting security in the Black Sea, strengthening the security resilience, upgrading cooperation in countering hybrid risks, including in cyber fields, and exploring new cooperation possibilities, such as involving us and other countries in the PESCO projects, for example. Successfully addressing Black Sea security issue requires a firm and consistent strategic response. And in that respect, it is important that NATO and the EU develop a comprehensive vision of Black Sea security, boost their engagement in the region, and step up their joint efforts in the region. Georgia reiterates readiness to work closely with the EU on implementation of common goals and priorities identified in the strategic compass. EU increasing assistance also under the European Peace Facility is an important milestone that makes our defense cooperation stronger by providing robust assistance for the strengthening resilience of Georgian defense forces. But along with this purely security matter, it is important also that Black Sea connectivity holds a unique opportunity for Europe and its endeavor to ensure energy independence and security, food security, and reliable alternative transportation routes, especially in current heavy geopolitical environment and global crisis triggered by Russian aggression in Ukraine. That being said, Georgia is eager to play a key role in addressing these challenges with its potential to act as a regional hub of energy transit, freight transportation, and digital interconnection. At the same time, in the absence of land border with the EU member states, strong physical linkage in the Black Sea will firmly anchor Georgia with the EU, thus shortening the geographical distance and realizing full potential opportunities linked with its future membership in the Union, European. Georgia has initiated several high-profile projects on strategic importance for Europe that carry a global impact in addressing energy security and climate change by promoting clean, green energy sources as well as boosting international trade and transportation. For example, the Black Sea submarine electric transmission cable is set to create transit opportunity back-to-back trade options of green renewable energy between EU and the South Caucasus region via Georgia, and to promote generation of clean and renewable energy, including production of hydrogen. A strategic agreement signed between the leaders of Georgia, Romania, Azerbaijan, and Hungary in December 2022 in Bucharest has created a solid basis for a strong energy partnership and implementation of the mentioned strategic project. The next project, intensified ferry feeder direct service in the Black Sea, particularly between Georgia and EU member states, Romania and Bulgaria, is set to enhance effectiveness of international transportation, especially through the Trans-Caspian Middle Corridor, which is gaining momentum as one of the most secure and shortest routes between Europe and Asia. Furthermore, a key next step is developing the corridor is the digitalization of transport routes and corridors in the Black Sea. Black Sea underwater fiber optic cable, which will be laid along the electricity cable and create direct connection between the South Caucasus and Southeast Europe, giving to our citizens access to the faster and more stable direct internet connection. So, along with this purely security and economical tools, only with such a comprehensive approach, we can achieve strengthening security in the Euro-Atlantic area, restore the rule-based international order in the region, and maintain unity against the common enemies and threats. Ladies and gentlemen, our main objective is to ensure persistent deterrence and defense in the entire Euro-Atlantic area, including the wider Black Sea region. Then it is only achievable with the full political integrations of countries, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, genuinely within the Euro-Atlantic family, and this will strengthen our resilience and will be integral part of this process. Having said that, I would like to once more underline that we are waiting good news at the end of this year for Ukraine, for Moldova, and for Georgia also. And let me express at the end sincere gratitude to the organizers for hosting us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the time discipline. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment when all of us, we are moving now to Lublin, southeastern Poland, and to my colleagues from the Institute of Central Europe. We can see you all in one of monitors, but now the floor is yours, so I can introduce Marlena Gołębieska, Senior Analyst in the Institute, and please, the floor and the voice is yours.
Okay, dear guests in Bucharest, we would like to kindly welcome you to Poland, to Lublin, and to Institute of Central Europe, the place where our today's topic are constantly discussed within these walls and, of course, published in our publication. We are honored to be able to lead this important event, this important panel, together with the Euro-Atlantic Resilience Center. And I would like to take this opportunity to share my short thoughts from last visit in Bucharest a few weeks ago during the 3Cs Initiative Summit. Firstly, I would like to extend my appreciation for the Romanian side for the excellent organization of this summit, and of course of its result. But before I go to this result, I would like to say one thing. Some time ago, if I had to say one word that sum up the 3Cs initiative, it would be infrastructure. 3Cs was designed to promote cooperation between European nations and their partners in energy, transport and the digital sector. But today I will add another word, resilience. And this word has been mentioned many times during the 3Cs initiative summit, has been mentioned many times today and will be. And it is worth to highlight this when we talk about the result of the 3Cs initiative summit, because in Bucharest took place the first ever joining of new 14 participating country, Greece. And in the context of the resilience, this step is not only expanded geographic scope of the 3Cs, but also has profound strategic implication. And we also cannot forget about the new status of associated countries for Moldova and Ukraine. And now I would like to give the floor to the person who will say more about Ukraine, our top expert of Eastern Affairs in Institute of Central Europe, Dr. Jakub Olchowski, head of the Eastern Department at the Institute of Central Europe, and also member of the International Security Department of the Maria Curie-Skłodowska University in Lublin, who will talk about NATO and Ukraine's relation. I remember how in 2020, Dr. Olchowski fight with Ukraine-NATO relation, a difficult partnership. And I would like to ask, is it still true?
Thank you very much. I hope that everyone can hear me. Good afternoon, bună ziua, Bucharest. If I'd like to answer shortly to this question, I could say just yes. Yes, it is still difficult, and of course we could talk about NATO and Ukraine relations for much longer than 10 minutes, because, you know, if it were on Facebook, NATO and Ukraine could describe the relationship as complicated. because it's really complicated, but at the same time it's very long. Of course, if we look at this from Ukraine's perspective, we can see that for a long time Ukraine was not interested in seriously interested in NATO, because for a long time there was no public support for any closer relations with NATO in Ukraine, no public support and no political will within the political Ukrainian elites. And if we consider the level of Russification and Sovietization of Ukraine, it's not a surprise. Also, I think that we all remember that Ukraine followed, or used to follow for a long time, in foreign policy, a doctrine of multi-vector policy. Of course, it wasn't very effective, but in fact, Ukraine had no choice, because it still had, as all the majority of the post-Soviet states, Ukraine had too many relations and too many connections with Russia. However, we have to remember that cooperation, NATO-Ukraine cooperation, began already in 1990s. In many fields, in many aspects, Ukraine was the first participant of PDP, Partnership for Peace program. Already in 1997, there was established NATO-Ukraine Commission within NATO structures. There were established liaison offices, both in Kyiv and Brussels. In the military aspect, Ukraine participated in NATO operations in the Balkans, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, participated in Afghanistan mission, in Iraqi training mission. There are common trainings of NATO armies and Ukraine. There were till the Russia's invasion. Common trainings of NATO armies and Ukrainian army on Ukrainian soil also. Finally, there is a multinational brigade, Lithuanian, Polish, Ukrainian brigade, which is also a part of a military cooperation of Ukraine and NATO. Politically, as we know, there were changes. There were changes because in 2002, President Leonid Kuchma declared that Ukraine would like to join NATO. It was, of course, confirmed by the next president, Viktor Yushchenko, in 2004 after the Orange Revolution. And in 2008, as probably everyone remembers, Ukraine applied for MAP, Membership Action Plan, but during the Bucharest NATO summit in 2008, it was not granted, neither to Ukraine nor Georgia. In fact, it meant it closed the door for Ukraine and Georgia. But still, Ukraine wanted to join NATO. Of course, not in the period between 2010 and 2014, when a Russian puppet, Viktor Yanukovych, was a president of Ukraine. But after 2014, after the annexation of Crimea, after war on Donbass began, Ukraine confirmed once again, both President Petro Poroshenko and President Volodymyr Zelensky, they confirmed that Ukraine would like to join NATO, and even Ukraine's constitution was changed. There is an amendment accepted in 2018 that joining NATO is a strategic goal of Ukraine. So, well, Ukraine wants to join join NATO. What about the public support, which is necessary, of course, in such a case? Until 2014, there were always at any given moment, there were always more opponents in the Ukrainian society than supporters of joining NATO. The supporters were about between 15 and 40% in different periods, and the opponents were from 30 to 70%. Right now, after, it changed dramatically after 2014 and especially after 2022, after Russia's aggression. So the recent poll from the July 2023 indicates that 89% of Ukrainians would support joining NATO. However, all this picture is not so sweet, because we should talk some problems, some challenges. Firstly, all this wide cooperation between Ukraine and NATO in many aspects has not brought about any serious results, unfortunately. Maybe in some selected specific fields. The problem is that Ukraine's political culture is very specific. As a result, many cooperation activities and programs with NATO actually have not been treated as a part of a national state strategy. They haven't been treated as chances, opportunities for Ukraine's future. They were treated in terms of current politics, in terms of immediate benefits for some groups or even some individuals. And this is the problem, by the way. This is until today regarding the entirety of Ukrainians' policy, and unfortunately. Next problem is numbers, statistics. Ukrainians, 89% they support joining NATO, but on the other hand, Ukrainians are very tired and disappointed about both European Union and NATO. And when you listen to everyday talk, discussions of conversations of ordinary Ukrainians, you will not hear anything about Ukraine joining NATO. No, they don't talk about NATO. They seem to accept that maybe one day, in a couple of years, perhaps it will happen. Ukraine will join NATO, but they seem not to think about it very much. Ordinary Ukrainians. On political level, this is one of the reasons why Ukraine develops a network of the so-called small alliances, small initiatives of cooperation. They call it sometimes the grand strategy of small alliances, because they know or they realize that Ukraine's way to NATO is still very long ahead. Another thing to sum up, because I don't know how. Yeah, okay. Another problem is we don't know what will NATO do actually, because sometimes people tend to think, and Ukrainians used to think this way for some time, that NATO is a monolith. NATO is not a monolith. NATO is just a bunch of sovereign states. It's just an international organization, and the member states of NATO have different approaches, different interests, divergent perceptions of threats, challenges, etc. It's not like all members of NATO love Ukraine or they share the Ukrainian vision of security. So we don't know what NATO will do, and On the other hand, we don't know, we have to be honest. We don't know what will happen in Ukraine. At the moment, there are rising concerns in Ukraine. What will happen regarding the political system, the Ukrainian political system? Because right now, at the moment, as never before, the president of Ukraine and his political background, mainly People's Servant political party, well, they have unprecedented power in Ukraine. They decide literally about everything. And many people in Ukraine are a bit afraid of the future because, well, we cannot exclude an authoritarian scenario for Ukraine. It's perhaps it's not a big chance for now, but we cannot exclude it. And we cannot underestimate such a scenario. So we don't know what will NATO do. We don't know what will happen in Ukraine, and of course we don't know what will happen to Russia, because Russia will change. I think that at this stage we can be certain about it. So to conclude, it's necessary to confirm, it's necessary to agree with a statement that independent and sovereign Ukraine remains a very important factor in our security, Central European security, European security, Euro-Atlantic security. But still, at the same time, I know, the future remains also uncertain. We can discuss it and we should discuss it, but as I said at the beginning, NATO-Ukrainian relations are very complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And like I said, our top expert of Eastern Affairs, and thank you very much for your statement. And now we turn the floor over to Bucharest.
Thank you, Kuba. And now, yeah, I think that we will have some kind of discussion because I want to give a voice to Krystyna Zeleniuk, journalist from the channel 1+1. And from the reaction, I can assume that Krystyna has a little bit opposite, different opinion on the topic. So please, Krystyna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor and thank you for the invitation. It's a great honor for me. Firstly, I have some notes, but firstly, I have to answer on those some kind of manipulations that we have heard right now from Lublin. I live in Kiev in times of war, and I can say that Ukrainians are not tired. There is no frustration about our NATO membership perspective. We are talking a lot about it. Yes, there are still difficulties on this way because there is no political will right now in the West, especially in the United States, about our future membership. But again, we will have an anniversary Washington NATO summit, and let's do together everything as we can do to receive this political perspective membership. About small alliances, they are discussed in Ukraine, but not as much as NATO membership. About political system, it is stable, and I still didn't understand what our colleague from Lublin is talking about, like political system and this future what. So we can see, for example, right now, particularly in the American media, that they are pushing Ukraine towards the election campaign. But more than 100 very powerful Ukrainian NGOs signed a declaration why it is impossible. So maybe we can stop here and not provide manipulations. So, and returning to Ukraine, NATO and the EU, I totally agree with His Excellency Ambassador that we should destroy those gray zones. But as for Ukraine, I disagree about these assurances, because Ukraine had already assurances. It was Budapest Memorandum and it didn't work. About Moldova, it's a different case, I know, but in terms of Ukraine, the only security guarantee is NATO and Article 5. Right now, it's the only working mechanism in the world. Another one didn't work, and we see it. For example, while the US right now getting more engaged in their elections, I guess it's my personal view that the EU itself should demonstrate more leadership. And here we can start, for example, with a demining mission in the Black Sea. It's a common perspective for all of our countries. But again, right now there is no political willingness for it, because in April here in Bucharest it was a Black Sea Security Conference organized both by Romania and Ukraine, and we openly asked about this perspective, about the, for example, demining mission in the Black Sea, the Bulgarian defense minister, and he said that it's not the time for it right now. So unfortunately. When we are talking about Ukraine's perspectives and membership in NATO, I just came to Bucharest from Tbilisi, where I spent a week. And what I can say that, from my point of view, the West is losing that region. He is not presented as much there as it can be, as well as when it comes to Ukraine. So, and the case of unrecognized Karabakh showed us that this policy, this West's policy of, like, you know, for example, let's talk about it diplomatically for many, many decades, and maybe we can find a settlement. No, it doesn't work. So force must be answered only by a greater force, and the current policy of limited military aid to Ukraine, guided by the principle of escalation management that we are seeing right now from the West, it also doesn't work. Because, you know, for example, when right now the West leaders are talking about the war of attrition and that we should prepare for it, but it's exactly the same, exactly what Putin wants. It's his plan. We don't have to play in his game. So Kyiv is interested in a quick victory, as well as our allies and international partners. That's why my last point. We need a new strategy. We need a new strategy not to prepare for a long war of attrition, but a new strategy for Ukraine and both for our Western partners and allies about quick victory in this war, and not be afraid to push Putin to escalate this war, because he understands only power. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that incredible time discipline. And now our last speaker in this section, Mr. Robert Lupizzo, the editor-in-chief of Cale Europeane, leading Romanian media outlet on EU policy. And I think that you will a little bit sum up our panel, speaking about the European Union efforts on helping, on enhancing resilience in Eastern Partnership countries.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. Also, I would say hello to our colleagues in Lublin. And I was particularly very interested in hearing all the opinions that we saw here today. The question that puts this panel on track, how can the EU and NATO support their neighbors? Well, the short answer is building resilience and being at this Euro-Atlantic Resilience Forum, where we all know a few things about resilience, we can call it off and just stop because we have the answer. But the fact is that we are at an inflection point, as President Biden said. We have to answer the call of history, as President Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission said a few weeks ago in her last State of the Union speech. And in just one way, we are back in the 90s, where NATO expanded as a promise, where the European Union started to build up its institutional might in order to be able to absorb from 12 to 15 to 25 to 27 and 28 member states, then back to 27 because of Brexit. And that was the call of history back then, at the post-Cold War era. Now, of course, we are not in the 90s because we have this unlawful and injustice war that Russia has brought up upon Ukraine, and it's also dragging the Republic of Moldova, Georgia, the whole Eastern European neighborhood. But the fact is that NATO, through its members, helps Ukraine a lot to defend itself and in order to be able to fight back. And also the European Union has put right now in its strategic leaders' agenda the same topics of reforming itself and enlarging at the center of the debate. So it will be very, very important in the next years. And I would like to put some bulletproof ideas that I've noted during our debate and also before while preparing. The call for history right now is in order to have both the EU and NATO closing ranks in this situation. For instance, building resilience for Eastern Partnership countries, especially for the Republic of Moldova, for Ukraine and for Georgia, means moving further for European integration. Therefore, some ideas should be to build on the historic decision of granting candidate status for Ukraine and Moldova last year, and having this year the decision to open negotiation agreement, and also to grant Georgia the status of candidacy, both maintaining and expanding the level of financial support for reforms, military institutional build-up, while preserving critical infrastructure, both for Ukraine and Moldova, because we saw that they have been connected to the European Union electricity network. And also, while we have to build our own economic base in order to de-risk from unreliable partners, because we have to say it clearly, we have discussions within the European Union, within the multi-annual budget, that we need to refund it more properly in order to help Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia as well. Also, I think it is very, very important to build on the association agreements and on the free trade areas for Ukraine and Moldova, because let's face it, it's also a contest of being attractive. So if citizens, because His Excellency spoke about elections, citizens, businesses need to feel the opportunities. So maybe moving closer Moldova and Ukraine to the single market. I know we have made some steps over there. Moving from roaming charges to free roaming area, for instance. And one idea that is very important, I remember I've heard it from Commissioner Hahn of the European Commission a few years ago. Did you know that the European Union financed to build and launch a European school in Tbilisi, in Georgia, a few years ago? That's a model that should be replicated, because and Ukraine and Moldova are Europe, they have to feel the sentiment of belonging to Europe. Two small actions like that. Also, it is very, very important to be frank and open, and like the President of the European Commission said, when she announced in her last hotel speech that the rule of law reporting system within the European Union will be also available for countries that are open to accede to the European Union, like Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia, because it's a very good tool to put reforms on track. And also, I think that it's very important to have this right balance between norms and rules that the European Union is based on, and also the benefits. And this week, the European Commission has announced that 7 billion euros will be available through Connecting Europe facility in order to build infrastructure projects between the eastern part of the European Union and countries like Moldova and Ukraine, also for grains, but also is the first time when Moldova and Ukraine are eligible to put their own projects on. So that's a kind of benefit that we can see. And I would not leave aside the European political community. It's a very good platform for exchanging dialogue, including on the Eastern Partnership countries. We know the mediation effort by the European Union when it comes to Azerbaijan and Armenia. And also two ideas on the European Union. The reconstruction of Ukraine should be the main theater of perfecting our ability to build resilience based on a lot of lessons that we learn in order to help other partners like Moldova. And last but not least on the European Union, integration is the word, but integrated approach for Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia is the way to do it. And some ideas on NATO, because this is a very different story. While the European Union is not NATO in terms of defense and security, also NATO is not the European Union when it comes to its purpose. It's a political military alliance, and we should be aware of that. But I would put some ideas forward. In the context of Ukraine and Moldova relations with NATO, we should bear in mind that Ukraine has a war on its soil, and Moldova has a constitutional neutrality status, but militarily and politically. Since Russia's war against Ukraine started, NATO has bolstered its defense and deterrence on the eastern flank, has continuously helped through its allies on the defense of Ukraine, even if we have a race of logistics and we try to supply and to move forward, and has stepped up its support for resilience and cybersecurity for the Republic of Moldova. Now, politically, NATO has launched a Ukraine-NATO Council, which holds a higher level and ranking after the NATO-Ukraine Commission, has deepened the formula of the Bucharest Summit in 2008 here, now in Vilnius, when they removed the membership action plan and decide that Ukraine will be invited when the conditions are met. In the meantime, NATO is working with Ukraine on these conditions, like moving Ukraine from Soviet military equipments to Western ones, like training Ukrainian soldiers on Western military assets and training them together with NATO soldiers. And as we speak, as I've received the breaking news on Twitter, or X, how we call it, the NATO Secretary General right now is in Kiev with Volodymyr Zelensky, so that says something. In the case of Moldova, we know that no subject right now because of the war should be a taboo. And President Maia Sandu said at the Munich Security Conference in Munich that the Republic of Moldova wants to be part of the European security architecture. Now, when it comes to NATO, considering the constitutional neutrality of Moldova, we have the following facts. In 2016, Moldova attended for the first time at the NATO summit at the defense minister level. Last year, the Moldovan foreign minister was here in Bucharest for the NATO foreign ministerial meeting and was invited to the NATO summit in Vilnius, so at the foreign ministers level. Now, with the visit in Chisinau of the NATO Deputy Secretary General, Prime Minister Dorin Receanu was invited to attend and to speak before the North Atlantic Council. So it's a clear sign of political rapprochement between NATO and Moldova, while respecting Moldova's neutrality. And if we look at what NATO high-ranking officials say, they say in the relations with Moldova, NATO will go as far and as fast as Moldova wants it to do. So it's very clear. And having this picture in mind, and knowing that when we deal with NATO, we have to manage expectations and understand NATO's position, I would close my intervention, and thank you for listening, with the following question. Would you consider that the expectations when it comes to NATO helping countries from the eastern side have been overkilled or exceeded? Because from what I see, it have been exceeded. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Many thanks for all panelists. And now we can go to the Q&A session. The mics are open for both for the panelists if they want to discuss each other and for the audience. But please just let me know that you want to that you have a question or some important remark. Yes, I have a signal from Lublin. So yes, please.
Yeah, I guess we have two voices, so maybe Kowalski will start.
Actually, thank you. Actually, it's not a question. It's a bit ad bottom because I was kind of accused of manipulation, and you know, it's a serious accusation because manipulation sounds like disinformation. So next step will be calling me a Russian. So, no, so you know. I totally understand the colleagues from Ukraine who feel obliged to underline and to highlight a positive picture and image of Ukraine and a positive image of Western Ukrainian relations. I've seen this before many times, and I understand that. What I meant is that Ukrainians are not so optimistic and enthusiastic at the moment about possibilities of a quick integration into the Western structures. Half a year ago or a year ago, they could think, or they talked about, for example, a fast-track admission, fast integration with NATO structures. Now they don't, especially after the Vilnius summit, in July Vilnius NATO summit. And that's it, because Ukrainians realize now, I think, both at both political class and the society, that the road to integration, institutional integration with the West, is still very long, and there is one essential condition: it's the end of the war. Without it, it won't be possible, and I think that now majority of Ukrainians understand this. I'm not saying if it's good or bad that the situation looks like this. I'm just saying that they realize this situation. Thanks.
So if you have a voice right now, so maybe one more voice from Poland, from the Instytut of Central Europe, Professor Konrad Pawłowski, head of the Department of the Balkans in our institute, please.
Yeah, actually, just a historical perspective, maybe. That's what I remember. And even today, actually, not every Ukrainian citizen is supporting the same strategic goals. Let me stop here. And this is actually a fact. I'm talking about the Central East or Eastern Ukraine. But I support Ukraine with all my heart, definitely, no question about that. But I remember that Viktor Yanukovych, let's say 14 years ago, as a prime minister and later as a president, he actually supported the idea of multi-vector policy of Ukraine, something like we can be together with Russia and the West, maybe. And actually, this is similar to Serbia. Now we'll talk about Serbia. And of course, this project failed. Actually failed because of the protests of young Ukrainian students, citizens who said no to that policy. And I support that with all my heart, this pro-Western movement in Ukraine. But we cannot be a little bit delusional sometimes. It's a complicated story. I mean, if you think about the electorate, the people who voted for the Party of Regions, they are still there. I believe that many of them may change opinion. And so I understand the speech of my colleague from this historical perspective. And of course, we support Ukraine with all my heart. I can tell you, my wife is from Ukraine, by the way. So, thank you.
So thank you very, very much.
Okay, as I understand, we have Christina wants to take a voice, and I am looking around to collect the voices. Okay.
I will be very brief. When we're talking about the vast majority of Ukrainians, I want to see the numbers and polls. The second point, how long ago you have been to Ukraine? I know that you can have friends, colleagues, many people who you are in touch, but I live in Ukraine. And I have to say there is no frustration, no tiredness. And the last point, if we in Ukraine right now don't talk about our fast track to NATO and the EU, maybe it is connected with understanding that it is not very fast. It is a long run. There is no frustration after Vilnius NATO summit at all. We are instead preparing right now to the Washington anniversary summit. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question here, and if you could please introduce yourself.
Good day, everybody. My name is Victoria Bestra, so I'm also Ukrainian, but currently based in Brussels. So I've been working in the European Parliament for some time with the members of the European Parliament, and I also work right now in the healthcare policies. So basically, I want to make a remark and ask a question a bit differently. So the first remark, and I absolutely agree with my Ukrainian colleague, so there is no fatigue from Ukrainian side to move forward, to become a member of the NATO, to be a part of the EU, because it's actually necessary for all the players in a geopolitical perspective. And what I see right now, I'm the refugee as well, so I have to leave the country because of the war. And I know these people who left the country. First, we want to come back, and secondly, we want to fight for our rights as well. And we all integrated 7 million people already in Europe. We all already integrated to society. We work already more than a year, so we're already present there, kind of integrated, obviously. I want to know from my Lublin colleagues to know where is the data about this position of Ukrainians, because I work also for the in intelligence services, so kind of interesting what is a base of, how it's analyzed. But my question is more about NATO, as the President of the European Parliament and the Ursula von der Leyen in the State of the Union recently emphasized the importance of Ukraine and enlargement at some point, and they want kind of a speed up this procedure than it's usual, because it's unusual situation with Ukraine that happens in overall historical perspective. So the question is, if we and eventually, after the end of the war, enter European Union, but we're still not a member of the NATO, we don't have any additional alliances, how we can protect EU as well, how we can protect Ukraine, because I'm not sure that Russia will stop at some point. I mean, they can stop and then gain again any kind of power, so how we can protect EU in the end?
Do you want to, is it the question is for one of the speakers or general?
This is the question to one of the speakers. Sorry, I didn't see the name.
For Mr. Schwarz, yes? It was a question for you, yeah? Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, the question was rather NATO heavy, is that correct? Yeah. I can only speak on behalf of the Common and Security Defense Policy of the European Union.
The question is, if Ukraine is in the European Union, it's not in NATO, how we can protect the European Union, being in the European Union, not in NATO?
Okay, sorry. Sorry for spilling the beans on that. Well, that's a good question. I think we've been experimenting now for more than 20 years with security and particularly defense policy aspects. I think the Western European Union, as such, was fairly advanced on the defense end. The European Union right now is not. I think what we are experimenting right now is integrating it, but frankly speaking, on the defense end, I'm just on the mid-level management. I cannot fully speak openly on our capabilities and our appetite to expand this, but as far as I can see, there is some road to go. So frankly, and this is a discussion we are having in Moldova as well right now concerning aspects relating to neutrality and assurances, I think we are on track, but it's not going as fast as we would like to have it. But that is as diplomatic as it can get.
Thank you for your response.
One more question or remark? I don't know.
If I may jump a bit on this one, not an official point of view, of course, of a journalist, but historically speaking, when countries wanted to join both NATO and the EU, they firstly joined NATO and afterwards the EU, because the European Union process is more lengthy. Actually, because the next panel will be on the Western Balkans, we have countries from the Western Balkans that are within NATO, but they are not in the European Union. So the process is more, not say easy, but it doesn't have 35 chapters of negotiations. But there are some conditions in order to do that, and I think that the European Union itself, even if it's brought very much forward the idea of a geopolitical Europe, and we need it, right now will not be able to do it without the NATO umbrella, because the NATO umbrella still has the main tools to do it, and the agility, also the command structure when it comes to military. But the European Union is very, very important when it comes to the idea of moving equipments to a country like Ukraine, because the European Union invests in infrastructure.
Peter, just noticing now how diplomatic and watered down my response was. I was just trying to add 2-3 notions. Obviously, on the defense end, the European Union is far away from being a functioning defense umbrella. But just to add on the notions of positive outlook here, I think 2 to 3 crucial developments we have seen in the last 2 to 3 years, and particularly in the last 18 months, is first of all, the more potent posture of the European Peace Facility. It's interestingly that the only capable military support mechanism we are having actually is called Peace Facility, and Moldova has been one of the prime recipients in recent. So it's not functioning as a defense mechanism, but it supplies allies with crucial materials. Secondly, I think what we see now in the Baltics with joint battle groups being deployed and certain member states taking the lead for the first time actually shows, and here I'm actually proud that Germany tries to take on the spearhead. I believe that we are going in the right direction, but we are certainly not at the level of defense umbrella NATO can offer. But that's just to add a few notions of fast developments here.
Just a comment regarding Ukraine. Learning from history, and especially from recent history, pessimism and optimism in diplomacy in politics, it's a very shaky ground. So we also were very pessimistic and probably less enthusiastic about our chances to join the European Union by 2030, before this war started in Ukraine. But in a couple of months, we've been given candidate status to the European Union. And now we are talking about starting negotiations with the European Union. Before this war started, we couldn't dream that the European Union will offer us assistance, and also NATO, to improve our defense capabilities. And it happened, and it happens, and this assistance is growing every year. So when we talk about Ukrainian chances to join NATO, we shouldn't exaggerate the current sentiments in the Ukrainian society of the politicians in Ukraine. I'm pretty sure that Ukraine will join NATO, because by the end of this war, in military terms, in terms of military equipment, NATO, Ukraine is going to be already a member of NATO. Almost every 2 months, Ukraine is getting new armaments, advanced NATO armaments. And next year, Ukraine will get F-16 airplanes. Will NATO abandon all this equipment without any responsibilities? No, I don't think so. I think that the partnership between Ukraine and NATO will only increase. And the final station is going to be the membership of this country in the NATO. And this is going to be a very important change in the security architecture of our region and of Europe. And of course, this is going to be a very good news for Republic of Moldova as well. So I am realistic, not pessimistic, and I wish all the best to Ukraine on this path, and thank you, Ukraine, for fighting our freedom and democracy. I don't think that Ukraine, who had so far several democratic, some say color revolutions, will one day become authoritarian state. No way, no way, no way this country, which defends the values of democracy, will become an authoritarian state. And regarding the guarantees, I talked about guarantees. Firstly, I mentioned security guarantees, not assurances. I know the assurances. We don't need assurances. So I'm talking about security guarantees. And I think this is the path forward for this region until we become together the members of Euro-Atlantic community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have time for one short question, if there is. No, so we can start our short break before next panel, which is going to be very exciting, as I think, about the Western Balkans. Please do not go far away, and we will meet here in the next 7 minutes, so 15:20. Yes, so we have 7-minute breaks up to 15:20, and we will start from Konrad Pawłowski in Lublin. See you in a moment.
new system. So Serbia opened Cluster 1 and Cluster 4, fundamental rights, green agenda, and sustainable connectivity. And like 2 years ago, we were trying to open the cluster number 3, but it's not successful yet. So there is a kind of problem, there is a kind of stagnation, and the politicians in Serbia are saying that it's also a fault of European Union. And maybe they exaggerate that, because truly saying the reports which come from every year, which come from European Commission, are critical about some aspects. Of course, there are some elements of progress, and we can read this, but also it's still the same story about not enough progress in terms of rule of law, judiciary system, freedom of media, some democratic rights, some part of that. So yeah, it's definitely more than Kosovo, because some people maybe think that the Kosovo is the only one obstacle when we think about the membership, Serbia's membership in European Union. No, it's not, and it's definitely much more. And yeah, that's the problem. So sorry, it's not this direction. Why European Union is important, and even, let's say, Eurosceptics in Serbia are completely sure, even if they are not outspoken about that. EU means money. EU means development of Serbia. It's clear. If you take a look into those numbers, you will see this clearly, that the future prospects, the development of the country, it's connected with the European Union, or pro-Western orientation, or pro-Western vector of Serbia's foreign policy. And there are no real alternatives. So there are some populistic parties in Serbia which are trying to say that maybe we should go and develop relations with Russia or China, but it's not something serious. And maybe you heard that, like 1 month ago, some people say in Serbia that let's join BRICS, and even Foreign Minister of Serbia, Ivica Dačić, who is, like, let's say, he has this pro-Russian sentiment, say that these are fairy tales. It's not a true option. We are going to the European Union. So the facts are like that. Serbia's most important trade partner is definitely European Union. More than 60% of Serbia's trade, total trade, I mean export and import, this is EU. And of course, Serbia's most important investor, it's definitely European Union or European Union countries. More than 63% of total FDI coming to Serbia, more than during the period of the last decade. It's constant. These numbers are clear and, yeah, I think clear enough. So maybe I skip the NATO part, but what's the problem with Serbian EU integration? I think this is a kind of anti-Western sentiment, pro-Russian sentiment, a kind of hesitance, a kind of idea that Serbia is something special. I mean, it was the idea of the third road, like treći put, that Serbia can be between Yugoslavia. It comes from the Yugoslavia, that Serbia is something special like Yugoslavia, Tito's Yugoslavia. We are trying to be in between West and East. So this kind of narrative, or maybe feeling, it's there too. So, and the numbers are clear and definitely not supporting this quick accession. And so this is the opinion poll study by Instytut for European Affairs, March 2022. And the question is quite clear. So maybe I just skip those graphs because they are particularly interesting. Do you support Serbia's membership at the European Union? And the answer, yes, it's 44.8. And the answer, no, it's 43.0. It's like almost half-half. It's not very pro-European moment. And this is like quite constant for the last 2 or 3 years. So this Euroscepticism is rising. So there is no carrot and there is no stick maybe in that sense, but EU integration is still very important. This is a little bit a dangerous moment, in my opinion. So, yeah, so this idea, do you support? Yeah, it's the same graph, so maybe I skip to the next. Does Serbia have some benefits from the cooperation with European Union? The question, yes, it's like almost 60%, and no, it's like 26-something%. It means that most Serbs, they see, what I see from this graph is definitely that they maybe don't love European Union, but they understand the economic meaning. So it's, of course, we can write the book. What does it mean really? It's more pragmatic. Pragmatic perception of European Union, and this is not the best one in my opinion. And if there is a referendum, accession referendum to the European Union tomorrow, do you support? Do you vote for or against? So for it would be 41%, and against 38%. So it's more or less similar. The society is divided. Do you think that Serbia should stop its European path? So should reject the idea of EU membership? 35% of people say yes, and 49% says no. So it's still division of society. And what's the reason? I guess that part is particularly important. It's crucial when you think about Serbian, the public opinion in Serbia. I think those sentiments towards East, towards Russia, these are based on some stereotypes, based on some completely fake narratives which are spread by Russia itself, actually. And Serbia is an easy target for let's say, urban legends or stories which come every day from Russia, actually. So do you think that Russia is the friend or the friend or enemy of Serbia? So as a friend, 76.2% of Serbs see Russia as a friend. Only 3.2% of citizens see Russia as a kind of enemy, or neprijatelji. It's like the enemy. So it's particularly different than these days in Ukraine, I guess. So,
Konrad, excuse me, I would have to ask you to sum up your presentation because the time is out, and I think that we will come to the question of disinformation now in other presentations. So please go to the conclusion if you can.
My conclusion. It's very interesting because those numbers are quite interesting, and they can create many different interpretations. So this is the very interesting final conclusion. Do you plan to go outside of Serbia? And the people, like 72.2% of people say no, but actually like 15% says yes, I plan to go. But where they can go? So 10.9% of them would definitely go to the European Union countries, and to Russia, only 1.3% of Serbian citizens who think about immigration would go to Russia, and most of them would definitely go to European countries. So the conclusion is that, to simplify, Serbs love Russia for some reason, historical, cultural, whatever, but still see European Union as a kind of economic benefit for Serbia, but it complicates the foreign policy of that country, definitely, and Mr. Vučić is in a very bad position. He's trying to keep, to balance all the time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. And I said that the most mentioned today word will be resilience. I guess I was it's not true. The complicated, trouble, and not so clear this is the most mentioned today word. And we are going to the next topic, Russian influence in the Balkans. I guess there also will be this word mentioned. So we go to the Bucharest.
Thank you. And now, yes, briefly, Mrs. Rumena Filipova from the Institute for Global Analytics, who is going to tell us about the memory politics, about the memory and in its relations with disinformation.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk about some of the major challenges ahead of the countries in the Western Balkans, and specifically as related to foreign authoritarian state influence in the media and as regards perceptions. Because there is a battle of ideas and affinities going on, and which has to be won if the institutional and administrative reforms that undoubtedly have to take place as part of EU and NATO accession processes, but we first have to win the battle of ideas. And therefore I'm going to talk about media on the one hand and also the state of memory politics in Bulgaria in particular as an example of what Western Balkan countries have to avoid, but also what they have to do in the future. So first of all, let me draw some analogies, but above all differences between the EU enlargement process in 2004 and 2007, so the first big bang process of enlargement in 2004, which was completed also with Bulgaria's and Romania's accession to the EU, and finally with Croatia in 2013. And then we have to say that Russia was not a challenge at that time. So there were times in which Moscow actually wanted, in a way, to become part of the European community, of course, with its distinctive ideas about what integration means. But it was only in 2008 that Russia started to become much, much more assertive in terms of its anti-Western rhetoric. So the Central and East European countries which joined the EU in those times, in 2004 and 2007, did not have to encounter the same challenges, and of course the EU and NATO too. China has also increasingly become an assertive newcomer in the Western Balkans in a way that it never was during previous rounds of enlargement. So here a note of big caution, of course, that we need to think about, of course, Russian Chinese influence as part of the war against Ukraine, but also the way that this Russian influence cuts across Western Balkan society. So it's not simply an external factor and dimension, but it is also part of domestic politics and society. And of course, tied to that is the whole issue of disinformation, that it has become exponentially increased and arrive all over Europe, as the Kremlin has employed a very assertive disinformation strategy, and pro-Kremlin narratives have really attempted to undermine Euro-Atlantic integration, both in existing EU member states, but also in EU accession countries. That is, of course, very much tied into Euroscepticism and the way that this is also related to narratives against globalization, against liberalism. So they all become part of the same meta or grand narrative which is against Euro-Atlantic integration in the West. And of course, Kremlin strategies in that regard are very much connected to domestic far-right parties and their anti-European discourses. So let me turn to the Balkans. I'm going to draw on a study that the Institute for Global Analytics conducted with its partners, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation and also the ECFR, and looked at the major trends of continuity but also change in Russian disinformation strategy since the start of its war against Ukraine in 7 Southeast European countries. And we also examined the extent extent to which these strategies were amplified by other authoritarian actors that are making an impact in the region, including above all China, but also we looked into the role of Turkey, the Gulf states, and Iran, because we also need to be aware of their influence on our region. Now, of course, Russia has exponentially sharpened its already existing tools, proxies, and narratives of disinformation since the start of the war in Ukraine. But let me focus more specifically on the general trends that we see in the Balkans as regards Russian media influence, and which are shared by most of the countries that we examined, including the countries of the former Yugoslavia, but also Bulgaria. First of all, this is the persistent of pervasive informality. So Russian influence does not happen directly. It's not that we can actually identify sources and outlets which the Kremlin owns and which can be identified in particular databases, national or international statistical bodies. No, it happens to pervasive informality through the creation and cultivation of local pro-Kremlin networks and communities consisting of politicians, business people, journalists, which on their part disseminate pro-Kremlin messaging. So they do the Kremlin's job of advancing Russian discourses within those countries. Second of all, and which is very important, Russia, as always, has continued to tap into pre-existing pro-Russian sentiments that are very much present in various countries across the Balkans, and which are related to perceptions of cultural, religious, ethnic, linguistic similarity to Russia, and which actually creates a very important attitudinal trend of ambivalence in that these countries want to maintain good relations with both Russia and the West, and this has really determined the overall propagandist narrative of neutrality that we have seen has been very much present in Bulgaria, which, although it's a NATO country, over 60% of the Bulgarian population prefers to maintain neutrality vis-a-vis Russia's war against Ukraine, but this is also visible in countries like Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, and others. Now, the third important and common trend as regards all of those Balkan countries is that Russia has increasingly started to rely on its embassies even more aggressively interfere in domestic debates. And this is because the EU cracked down on the access and broadcasting of Russia-owned media outlets. And because they're now generally less available within the EU, but also in the Western Balkan countries, Russia has pushed its messages, particularly through its embassies. And finally, the final important trend, which excludes Bulgaria but refers to all other Western Balkan countries, refers to the mechanism of the regional diffusion of Russian propaganda, which tends to happen through Serbian social media or media channels. So just to give an example, a country like Croatia tends to be much more insulated from Russian influence, particularly in its so-called mainstream traditional print media space. But when it comes to social media, it's different because of the similarity of the languages above all, and this linguistic similarity leads to the regional diffusion of Russian influence, and therefore Croatian viewers can receive pro-Russian propaganda through Serbian channels on social media. So these are the major trends that we need to be aware of as regards Russia. Now, when it comes to Turkey and the Gulf states, because Russia usually says that, oh, there is a very great degree of convergence between Moscow and Ankara when it comes to, for instance, foreign policy, but is this really the case when it comes to the media and media portrayals? And we see that it's actually not the case. And for instance, Turkish or Gulf-related media outlets do not necessarily promote narratives which convey the pro-Russian viewpoint. So this is something that is important to note as an overall trend, and there is a great degree of exaggeration on the part of Moscow as to how Turkey portrays Russian events and developments, but we have to note that there is a higher degree of propagandist conjunction between Russian and Iranian messaging, which is present in some countries of the Western Balkans. Let me move on to the topic of memory politics. This is our most recent publication, which is available on our website, and we also have a copy here. And it deals with the whole issue of memory politics in Bulgaria, Russian historical disinformation, and what Central and Eastern Europe has done to deal with its past. I would argue that history-related disinformation is one of the major narratives that the Kremlin has advanced since the start of the war, because it has used history to justify its invasion and continuing war against Ukraine, and it has externalized historical messages that work on people's perception within third countries as well. So I would like to highlight again that memory politics is not something which is a rather external or general factor that should not be dealt with. So I'm wrapping up, but it's just, let me give an example of the example of Bulgaria, of how, even though it's a EU and NATO member, the fact that it hasn't dealt with its Soviet past, with its communist past, and even with the role of Russia in critical episodes of Bulgarian history, it has actually struggled along, and its policies have not been decisive enough in the pro-Western direction, precisely because it hasn't dealt with its history. So my point is that if the EU and NATO membership of the Western Balkan countries and Eastern Partnership countries is to become really effective, and for them to make the most out of it, they also have to deal with their past. So perceptions are important. Perhaps I don't have enough time just to briefly outline memory politics and what it means. It means the policies in the sphere of education, of history textbooks in school. So that's a very real dimension of memory politics. And our problem is that Russia is still portrayed in a very uncritical and positive manner, which perpetuates pro-Russian perceptions even among the youngest of generations. Second, monumental heritage. We also need to deal with the Soviet era, communist era statues, and last but not least, the media space. If a country doesn't have a robust memory politics, then its media space becomes flooded with pro-Russian disinformation. So these issues are presented in detail in the report. There are lessons from Central and Eastern Europe, how it has dealt with Soviet monuments, and I'm concluding with some recommendations for the future, briefly. So as regards the Bulgarian context, but this is something that the Western Balkan countries might look into, is that first we need to establish a museum which critically assesses the communist past. We need to have a fully functioning memory institute, and we also need to move past smaller debates about ownership issues regarding the land over which statues are built. So if there is political resolve to remove a monument, then ownership becomes a lesser issue. And finally, when it comes to media, strategic communications, I would like to really underscore the importance of strategic communications and creating positive narratives about the contribution of the EU and NATO to the development of these countries, which are already members or who are acceding states. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And yeah, not to extend the time, we are going back to Lublin.
Okay, thank you. And our last speaker, I have to say last but not least, of course, Dr. Sposimir Domaracki, senior analyst at the Department of the Balkans in our institute, also assistant professor at the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies of the University of Warsaw, and his topic, Macedonia relation with the European Union. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marlena. Thank you all for the opportunity to also share a couple of words on the topic that is so interesting. And in a sense, I'm very happy that I'm in almost last because this is also an opportunity to kind of reflect a little bit more on the nature of our meeting today, as I think it is very important that such an event takes place. On one hand, if there is an argument that I want to make, is that it seems to be extremely important, and in that sense, this is a fantastic contribution of having the opportunity to bridge these two, whether we like it or not, profoundly different experiences when it comes to the Eastern Partnership and the Western Balkans, in the sense that although I absolutely agree with the argument of the ambassador that impossible things suddenly became possible, but we are all aware how much needed was such a turbulent event as the full-scale Russian invasion on Ukraine, so that the political reality in the European Union and in NATO will change. Still, though, I think that this enthusiasm should be very modest, especially having in mind the Western Balkans experience with the European Union. It was already mentioned, NATO is a particular case because indeed, if we look at NATO's expansion or enlargement, if you want, what is the reality today is that actually the whole central part of Europe, all the way from Tallinn to Istanbul, is actually a NATO territory with small exceptions like Serbia, but that has very profound strategic impact on its perspectives and possibilities. Said that, we need to be aware that the European Union experience of the Western Balkans is completely different. And it actually shows elements that are extremely dangerous, and they can resonate also to the countries that are now part of this enlargement waiting room, including Ukraine, Moldova, and hopefully Georgia in the future. Namely, that we have on one hand enlargement fatigue, and this fatigue is not so much dependent on the countries that are in the waiting room, but it is also very strongly influenced by the internal political processes within the European Union itself. One thing that I find extremely important is the fact that the enlargement policy, instead of being a priority in itself, if we look from liberal institutionalist perspective of enlargement as a raison d'etre of the European integration, then we can also think about the fact that today there is no enthusiasm, especially among European societies, for enlargement. It is the European elites that talk about it, but they also use it as a tool because the European Union today is at crossroads. It wonders which way to go, whether it should push forward the federalist model or it should abandon it for the sake of the logic of Europe of nations. We see today the debates within the EU, not related directly to the enlargement, but using the enlargement to bring arguments related to the question of the need for a new treaty, the need for the qualified majority voting as preconditions for the enlargement, which, of course, if we look at the past experience, was necessary in the context of the 2004-2007 enlargement, but there is a completely different geopolitical situation in which we find our discussion today about enlargement. Said that, I will share just a couple of thoughts about North Macedonia because that was the reason why I was invited, so I should not forget what was the main purpose for which Piotr Oleksiy asked me to join him. And in that sense, North Macedonia is a very interesting case, which I think, in a sense, shows the problems which are also ahead for the countries like Ukraine or Moldova. Namely that, first and foremost, internal matters matter, but they matter to the extent that they can also serve as a justification for non-enlargement. In other words, the arguments for North Macedonia, when we try to follow what are the comments of the European Commission and what are the comments of the media, we have this kind of I would say, sense of bipolarity. Because on one hand, there is a lot of enthusiasm, how well Macedonia does, with its internal affairs, but when it comes to the details, it becomes apparent that although today this is not raised too often, there are still arguments about the need for internal reforms for a fight against corruption. Needless to say, we have a skeleton in the closet in the context of bilateral relations. And of course, this is the Bulgarian-Macedonian identity dispute, an issue that was, let me put it that way, in a way attempted to be resolved, but in a way that actually created more problems. Today, this is no longer a Bulgarian-Macedonian issue. It is an internal Macedonian problem. And this pushing of the question about identity in Macedonian hands with the question of constitutional changes led Macedonia today to an internal political stalemate. What is the paradox is that the main political clash today is on the question of constitutional changes, technically on the way to the European Union or not. And the paradox is that the deadlock is in an extremely difficult position because there are much more perspectives for negative turnout than for positive. The current government is not capable of collecting the 2/3 necessary for constitutional changes, but on the other hand, the opposition saw this as an opportunity for strengthening its position and awaiting for the next elections in which hopefully they will gain power. But what they want with gaining of power based on these constitutional changes is a renegotiation of the negotiation framework with the European Union. So we technically can have 2 steps back instead of 1 step forward. And in that sense, we see in the context of Macedonia that there is, over the last several months, an enormous push from the European Union, from the United States, to convince the Macedonian political elites to make the necessary changes in order to move forward. But the stubbornness, and here comes also the argument from the previous presentation about the role of Russia, as is considered to be this kind of an elephant in the room, is that the Macedonian opposition might be strongly supported in its stubbornness exactly by the Russian bear. And in that sense, the obstacles do not only come from the region, they also come from external players. But another very important issue that appears is the lack of decisiveness of the European Union when it comes to the achievement of the enlargement policy. And it was an enormous pleasure to listen to the arguments from the previous session about how the Russian full-scale aggression influenced and forced a certain reflection within the EU structures. But we need to be aware that this cannot be embedded only in this, I would say, formal or rhetorical level of enthusiasm and support, but it needs to be backed by very tangible actions that lead to resolution of a profound issue for the European future, namely whether we are going to have countries that continue to constitute a trouble for Europe in itself, or they will be part of the European family and allow it to move forward in whatever direction. And I think at this point I might stop because otherwise there will be criticism around me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it was a voice from our institute, and now we are back to the Bucharest, but I guess it's not the last voice from our institute because we had a Q&A session, but for now this official part from our perspective is ending, so go ahead, Piotr.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Someone else? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Spasimir. I have to say that you are wrong. You were wrong in one case because I didn't invite you just to show the Macedonia case, but I expected you to draw the broader picture, what you did, and thank you very much. And now we'll go to our last but not least panelist, which is Daniel Schunter from Belgrade. He's the founder of the Balkan Security Network. And we will go back to the question of Russian disinformation.
Thank you. Very interesting speeches. So I've been working in this information environment in Serbia and the Western Balkans since early 2000s, and currently leading the Balkan Security Network project that is countering disinformation in a proactive way. And we strive to innovate counter-disinformation strategies in close cooperation with the NATO Public Diplomacy Division and US Department of State. Today, I'll delve into the key features of the Kremlin information operations in Serbia, Bosnia, and beyond, post the February 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'll explore the reasons behind their effectiveness and conclude with potential counter-strategies for the European Union and NATO. So first, let's talk about key narratives. Shocking news: Ukraine attacked Russia. Such was the bold headline on the front page of a popular Belgrade tabloid in February 2022. Subsequent narratives followed. Civilians in Donbas suffering due to Ukrainian shelling. The Bucha massacre, painted as Western propaganda to vilify Russia, echoing how Serbian Serbs were demonized in the 1990s, or the liberation of Mariupol by Russian forces. Furthermore, Ukrainian forces are labeled as Nazis, the Ukrainian government is dismissed as a puppet regime, Western volunteers are turned as mercenaries, and the full-scale invasion is referred to as special military operation. These are but a fraction of the many narratives saturating the daily information diet of audiences in Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, and beyond. Crafted with skill, these narratives wield emotional appeals, tap into historical grievances, employ selective sourcing, and showcase biased framing and visual manipulative content. Their objective is crystal clear: to mold public perception, especially among the Serb audiences in the region. The underlying strategy serves multiple goals: to justify Russia's actions, to divert attention from Ukrainian civilian casualties, to undermine Ukrainian defense efforts, to amplify Russia's military might, to cast the United States and NATO in a negative light, and depict the European Union as frail and ineffective. So, this barrage of narratives emanates from an expansive network of both local and Russian sources. Among these sources are state-funded Russian platforms such as Sputnik Serbia, Russia Today Balkans, RIA Novosti, TASS, Interfax. This content is further disseminated by pro-Kremlin war correspondents known as Voinkors, which find their way to local audiences via Telegram channels. Yet, the principal amplifiers come from inside the regional media landscape, characterized by tabloidization, political influences, substandard journalism, and lack of niche expertise, provides a fertile ground for the spread of disinformation. Local newspapers, online portals, and TV channels play a crucial role. Some have pro-Russian editorial leanings, while others use their content because it's written in local language and it's free of charge. Given the absence of in-house capacity to generate fresh content for an audience with low media literacy, they often resort to syndicating such a content. Thanks to strong social and historical bonds of Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro, flow of information and disinformation is of cross-border nature. Consequently, millions consume these narratives on a daily basis. Consequences of such an information environment are visible in daily interactions. For instance, if you would strike a conversation with a Belgrade cab driver, you might be surprised with specifics about the latest Russian military technology, underscoring the depth of Kremlin's penetration in mainstream discourse. Given this backdrop, it's hardly surprising that more than 67% of Serbian citizens align more closely with Russia's perspectives on the war in Ukraine. Beyond the traditional media, this narrative is spread by politicians, right-wing organizations, and individuals, as well as influential social media figures. Among the standout social media influencers are Dejan Beric, a Serbian paramilitary operative in eastern Ukraine, known for his frequent YouTube vlogs and Telegram updates. Others, like Twitter users Zoka200, operate under the veil of anonymity from Bosnia. Commanding a massive global following on Twitter, he circulates the propagandistic content of Russian voinkors, often at the expense of Ukraine. A notable tweet, "What air defense doing?" became viral last year. Instances like these underscore the formidable influence that even non-professional communicators can wield in shaping public perceptions via social media. The disinformation campaign isn't confined just to media realm, but spills over onto the streets of Serbia and Bosnia. Since February 2022, there's been an increased proliferation of pro-Kremlin imagery in public spaces. These symbols, endorsed by right-wing organizations and Russian corporate interests, are potent tools employed to foster pro-Russian and anti-Western sentiments. The Z symbol and imagery of Vladimir Putin are omnipresent. They can be found on street vendors' merchandise and graffiti on the walls of various Serbian and Bosnian towns. In fact, near my residence in Belgrade, there is a significant mural of Vladimir Putin, but became a hotspot of a graffiti war. This artwork has repeatedly been defaced and repainted. In a telling reflection of the times, the looks of this mural oscillate between local pro-Kremlin entities and anti-Putin Russian activists, many of whom have sought refuge in Serbia since February 2022. As per police records, Belgrade currently hosts tens of thousands of Russians. Many have anti-war inclinations, but unfortunately, some are involved in covert operations. By establishing trade companies in Serbia to bypass international sanctions and support the Russian defense industry with dual-use technologies and spare parts for civilian aviation. One cannot overlook the significant footprint of Gazprom in Serbia as well. The Russian energy giant, which holds the majority stake in the Serbian National Company, also sponsors Serbia's leading sport club, Red Star. This club, especially its fans and hooligans, is notorious for venerating Putin and participating in pro-Kremlin events, complete with Z flags. However, Gazprom influence isn't limited to sports alone. The company has initiated a strategic campaign underscoring the close bond between Serbia and Russia. Billboards showcasing interwoven Serbian and Russian flags, accompanied by unified slogans, are strategically placed across high-traffic regions in Serbia's capital. You may wonder, why does Serbia permit such extensive Russian operations in the region? The answer, while complex, is pivotal to identify the most effective countermeasures against these influences. A cornerstone of Serbian foreign policy, as already mentioned by colleagues in Poland, often dubbed the four pillars, is based on ties with the European Union, the United States, Russia, and China. Although pursuing EU membership is a strategic ambition, Belgrade simultaneously maintains relationships with Moscow and Beijing, nations that have abstained from recognizing Kosovo independence, in contrast to many European Union and NATO member states. When it comes to Ukraine, Serbia didn't introduce sanctions against Russia, but supported UN resolution against Russia's aggression and provides military aid to Ukraine without publicly acknowledging it. Such a political stance creates a conducive environment for Russia and China to amplify their influence, including the information space. In essence, the unresolved Kosovo dilemma and the lingering uncertainty in Belgrade-Pristina dialogue allows Russia and China to capitalize on Serbia's four-pillar policy. Also, the public sentiment in the Western Balkans is still profoundly molded by grievances from the 1990s conflicts, including the NATO interventions. Coupled with the EU expansion hesitancy, there is visible frustration within the region's population. These factors not only intensify anti-Western sentiment, but also render the public more receptive to Russian propaganda. It is also noteworthy that unlike countries on NATO's eastern flank, the Western Balkan countries do not have negative historical experience with Moscow, as Yugoslavia evaded Red Army occupation. So how do we pivot from our current predicament? What tangible measures should the EU and NATO consider? Speaking of political approaches and solutions, first of all is to address the Kosovo issue. This remains a linchpin in resolving regional tensions. A concerted effort from Brussels and Washington is imperative to guide the situation towards a viable solution. Revitalizing EU integration. The once promising EU integration prospect have dimmed for the Western Balkans. Swiftly integrating the entire region into the European Union is crucial. Such a move would not only ensure lasting stability, but also bolster the region's resilience against external influences, particularly Russia and China. Security presence. Both NATO and EU should maintain military presence in both Kosovo and Bosnia in foreseeable future until the region gets integrated into EU and NATO. I'm almost done. And speaking of strategic communication solutions, championing quality journalism, fostering a media environment that prioritizes quality journalism and fact-based reporting is paramount. It's not about reacting to disinformation after the fact, but preemptively populating the information space with accurate narratives. And the second one is to disseminate facts, making information readily available about defense, security, and even everyday life in countries like Russia, translated in local language, can be a game changer. If offered free of charge to local media, it can counterbalance the existing disinformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all panelists, and I agree with what was said before, that it is very valuable to create those kind of discussion when we can compare Eastern Europe situation with Western Balkans, because yes, it is very, very productive. And my question for you, for all of you, about the questions, important comments, and microphones are open for you. Oh, there in the end of the room, please.
So my question is for the whole panel, and it regards the possible expansion of the European Union to the Western Balkans. And as the example of North Macedonia showed, there are very strong social or national sentiments in the Balkans that can turn into anger that destroys any attempt at integration really soon. And my question would be, how do we make sure that we manage to integrate the whole Western Balkans without such conflicts destroying this attempt? And even hypothetically speaking, how do we make sure that, I mean, do we integrate them all at once, or do we take a country-by-country approach? And if we take a country-by-country approach, how do we make sure that once one of them is in, will not veto the integration of the others? Thank you.
Could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Edward Churando. I'm from the Young Leaders Program, and I'm based in Berlin. Thank you.
So I think, if we may, we will start from Lublin colleagues. It would be easier to start with them. And so, Konrad Spasimi, if you would like to answer briefly, of course.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for this question. It is indeed a very difficult question, but quite pertinent and important. And, if I have to look for solutions to this situation, I would start with the argument that actually the nationalisms are the antithesis to European integration. So technically, at this point, what we see in North Macedonia is actually a trap, a nationalist trap that is absolutely contradictory to the principles of European integration. Of course, we cannot, let's say, neglect the problem in the relations between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. It is a very serious issue. The misfortunate aspect of that is that on both sides of the border there are uniquely efficient anti-European fractions that are capable of shaping the political debate. If there is anything that can be followed further, it is the policy that the former Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirill Petkov tried to introduce. A policy that was aiming to move the accent of bilateral relations from the matters of identity to matters of practical, tangible cooperation between the two countries that would slowly remove this issue from the cover pages of the daily newspapers. As I said, unfortunately, and this is part, I think, also of this very interesting presentation of Rumiana about the disinformation in Bulgaria. There are profound structural problems within the Bulgarian political elites and political society that doesn't allow this European narrative to take advantage and to move forward beyond the argument of issues that, were lost 100 years ago.
If I may just add a very short answer to that question, I think we should reject the historical issues from the European agenda, in the sense that leave history for the historians, and the historical disputes about the history, nature of the culture, language, they should be excluded from the European integration process, because it's not, I mean, this is a serious thing, I do agree, but actually, this is not the most important issue when we think about the European integration, which is about something else, mostly, let's say. So I think we should just free the process from the nationalism, from internal disputes, because those issues are completely politicized, both in North Macedonia and Bulgaria, and seeing those issues as a blockade for the EU integration is a very sad message. Actually, we are sending to the people in the Balkans. That would be my answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Rumiana is, and Daniel.
So I completely agree with Vasimir, and I think as regards North Macedonia, I think it's about perhaps the country has to decide how strong the pull of the European Union is and how important the prospect of membership is to North Macedonia. So to really tally those two national concerns and rising nationalism versus the importance of the future of North Macedonia within European Union. Because in the 1990s, and I can draw a parallel with Bulgaria, the strength of the Europeanization discourse and impetus was very high on the agenda. And it was exactly then that and because Europeanization meant regional cooperation and resolving bilateral issues, particularly with neighboring countries, it was then that Bulgaria was able to get over certain concerns and problems with North Macedonia. So a number of declarations were signed as regards language, which placed this whole issue of bilateral relations and put them onto a completely positive agenda. But that was when Bulgaria's EU prospects were very important to the whole country, to the national elite and society as well. So I'm making this parallel now to North Macedonia in 2023 and seeing the extent to which perhaps the European membership prospect clashes with internal concerns, and we have to see which ones prevail. Now, as regards our former Prime Minister, indeed, he tried to place relations with North Macedonia on a completely different footing, in that the idea and conception behind it was that if we increase business interactions, economic relations, and people-to-people contacts, that would spill over into the perceptions between the two nations, and that there would be a positive change in the way that these countries view each other. So this approach needs to continue, but I would say that we actually lost 30 years in that regard. Since in the first 2 or 3 decades, the main priorities for Bulgaria included EU, NATO membership, and unfortunately the Western Balkans did not figure seriously enough in our policy agenda, and as a result we lost an important period of time to actually put relations with North Macedonia on a much stronger economic, cultural, and social footing. So in a way it feels like we have to start with this approach almost from scratch now.
I think this is really very important question, and my answer will be very short. I think that the key problem here is the lack of political will coming from big European capitals, and to integrate all countries of the Western Balkans in the European Union should be done as a package and not on individual basis, having in mind all the history of conditionalities that were imposed in the past by certain countries. And my question is, I mean, if European Union is unable to project its soft power when it comes to integrating the soft belly of Europe, which is Western Balkans, how can EU think of some other issues beyond that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And if there are other questions?
Can we have a voice for...
I can see you. Can you raise a hand?
Yes, Piotr, may I just add something? Because just to also add a word to that last argument, whether it should be individual or group, I would say something like a blasphemy, if I may, but we need to be aware that if there is any profound issue in the relationship between the countries that are in the waiting room and the EU, it is related to the constantly changing over the last 15 years criteria, which pile up, which are adjusted to the spirit of the time. And probably one of the most profound problems in the enlargement policy today is actually the rule of law itself. An issue that on one hand is being treated and considered as an European value. It has become a core of the integration process over the last 5 to 10 years, but an issue that has absolutely hypocritical meaning, and especially having in mind the constellation of countries that are members of the EU, to apply rule of law criteria to countries that are neighboring and do not differ much in terms of political practices and nature of political elites in itself is an obstacle. So to add to the answer about how countries should be accepted, first of all, the European Union used to accept countries by groups, and secondly, altogether all the countries of former Yugoslavia today that are not members of the EU constitute less than Romania itself. So the membership of these countries would not be really a big issue that absolutely doesn't need any treaty changes, having in mind that the EU didn't provide any treaty changes after the Brexit, which in itself left enough room for new countries to step in. But these issues are of secondary matter to the fact that what dominates today is the internal political problems of the EU, not the enlargement policy, which is only formally a priority.
Thank you very much. Now I am afraid a little bit that it was Passimir plan, not at first Brexit, to make a room for the Western Balkan countries in the European Union. There was a question somewhere there, oh please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Samuel Dempsey with the Young Leaders Program. I also work with the Trans-European Policy Studies Association in Brussels. I have a multi-part question, I guess, open to the panel. Firstly, some have described the policy towards the Balkans from Brussels and DC as a Belgrade-centered policy, and I kind of wonder if that depiction could be true, how you would look at it, and then also how that policy right now is maybe functioning in reacting to the current tensions in Kosovo, and if these tensions are being felt more widespread throughout society in the Balkans.
So I think the Kosovo is actually a very, very good example why both EU and United States should act in more, let's say, proactive way. Because if the current dialogue is going to remain in the hands of the local leaders, they might want to have a never-ending dialogue, actually, in order to stay in power. And that wouldn't be beneficial for the democracies in the Western Balkans and for the EU and NATO perspectives of the region as well. So that's why I think that both US and Brussels should spearhead this dialogue in a more determined way. Maybe even something like Dayton Peace Agreement back in 1990s related to Bosnia.
And there is a question there?
No, it is more a question than a remark. Okay. I'm from Slovenia, from Ljubljana, and as you know, our state is supporting that the whole Western Balkans will enter into the European Union at the same time. And because, you know, if you are looking, can we drive with a car that has it's without the engine something? No, we cannot. So, I mean, European Union is a kind of the unconstructed, not finished building. This is number one. Number two, what I'm searching since we entered into the European Union, can I find a European Union citizen? Who is European citizen? And the second one, thank you for your history undone, but I must remember you that in Europe, after Westphalian peace, we have so many undone history, following all those peace conferences. And if you're asking Italians in the relation to the Slovenian Croats, if you're asking Hungarians in the relation to the Slovenian Croats, if you're asking Austrians in the relations, we've got a lot of history. So, I mean, the European Union has to put more interest into the history and try, let's say, to minimize the effect, because during the crisis, many politicians, they're just taking out of the shelf, you know, the question about the history. I remember because I got the memorandum of the very well-known memorandum of the academy in Serbia from the hands of Mr. Isakovic at that time, from one of the author of that. And I said, when I brought it in Ljubljana, I said, look, this document is going to change the history of the Balkans. They said, no, it's not going there. But it done, it was the same. So I would like to propose that we will pay more attention on the history, and I would like to see that the whole Western Balkans will enter into the European Union at the same time. Because, you know, there will be differences all the time. You know, we will never achieve the same level, but we will the same goals, and we will be stronger. If we are not going to this, and I'm afraid that the European Union is too late already, you know, to do that. It seems that 2030 is close, but it's far away, because the others, they're investing a lot. You tell us quite a bit about that. They're investing a lot, and they're strong, and they're powerful players on the global level. Thank you.
Thank you for that voice, because it seems that very often in many discussions we are thinking that the question of identity problems and memory conflicts is a question of the non-EU states, and if you are in European Union, you are free from that issues. And looking on Bulgaria case, looking at the Polish-German relations, looking on the Romanian-Hungarian relations, we see that that being a member of European Union, it is not a solution not the only solution for the historical and the memory problems. And I think we could, of course, extend our discussion, and there is a lot of things we would like to say. But our time is out, and it is amazing that we were able to finish that very long panel in the 3 hours. Many people said to me before that it is impossible, but still it was possible. Thank you once again. Thank you my colleagues in Lublin, Marlena, Konrad, Spasimir, and Jakub. Thank you all the panelists and everybody in the room. We are privileged to extend our discussion now, for example. You are not, so sorry for that. And thank you very much, Daniela, once again, and all EARC team for organizing that meeting.